Our first reading with Hannah and Samuel reminds me of a ministry moment that really was a powerful witness to me. I was about 4 years ordained down in the Hermitage, Shenango Valley area, Church of Notre Dame. And sadly, I'd gotten a call that one of our parishioners, a 35-year-old, was in a car accident and had passed away. And just so happens that it was somebody that I had known. I had done a Catholic Leadership Institute with him back when we were teenagers in high school, and we had made that connection when I was assigned to Notre Dame. And so here I am going with his mother to the hospital to say some prayers. And so I'm trying to think, as a young priest, these things that I can say and to pray and to try to give some hope and consolation and, all these things. And so we get there and we get into the room, and I'm about to kind of start into something. I'm not sure what to pray. And all of a sudden, his mother starts praying. And she goes on to thank God for the gift of her son. And she basically commends him back to God and gives him to God. And I just was blown away. I was like, well, there you go, Those were the words. It was a remarkable witness. And I couldn't, help but think of Hannah. Obviously different circumstances, but she realized this same acknowledgement that her son was a total gift from God, and that she was giving her son back in generosity, whether at birth or in death, like the mother that I had accompanied, and just this. So Hannah is really a remarkable, what we call type, right? When we say type in theological language, we're kind of meaning a prefigurement in the Old Testament for something in the New Testament. And she would be a beautiful prefigurement of Mary. Both of them kind of having miraculous child, either through barren or virginal circumstances. We know that both of them left their sons at the temple, one on purpose, the other one accidentally, right? But nonetheless, and they both present their children to God. We could say maybe Mary's moment, yes, they do the presentation, we know, with Jesus, Mary, and Joseph that we celebrate on February 2nd, but really at the foot of the cross, right? Presenting her son to God. Recognizing that he was complete gift to her, even in the midst of that sorrow, similar to the mother that I had accompanied. So I think one of the lessons of our readings today is, for us to have that same approach to our life, but then also our families, our children, our grandchildren. Do we see them as that complete gift of God? And then on the other piece of that, have we given them completely to God? Have we completely given our families to God in whatever his plan, his will, as opposed to our temptation to control and manipulate the plan and the will for ourselves, but also for our families, for our children, our grandchildren? And obviously this has a different message for those who are older and maybe have older children versus the younger. But nonetheless, across the board. And that temptation to control and manipulate, it certainly is something that Hannah is acknowledging, kind of this, she has this reverence that God has sovereignty over birth and death. So not only in general in life, but over those two moments. And that's another area where we tend to try to, in our humanity, in our human brokenness and fallenness, to control and manipulate those moments. And this reverence for the sovereignty of God, prays for that grace to just kind of accept whatever our circumstances are in life, in birth and death. And try to just accept them and surrender to them versus manipulate them and control them. And so this is the heart of our Catholic moral tradition that's against that inappropriate manipulation. Things like birth control and in vitro fertilization and at the birth moment and euthanasia at the end. That we have that reverence for God's sovereignty over birth and death, and we let him be sovereign in those moments as opposed to us, manipulating and controlling them. So hopefully we can allow, certainly Hannah, Mary, Jesus would make his own surrender and not control and manipulate when he, of all people, had a right and had the ability to. And Joseph as well. I always feel like the Holy Family Feast is a way of kind of bringing Joseph into the Advent Christmas, focus and making sure he's part of this season for us, as Mary and Jesus obviously get a lot of the attention, but to acknowledge his, great act of acceptance and surrender versus manipulation and control, which he could have done had he tried to divorce Mary quietly or whatever things he could have done. So let's allow them to inspire us to resist that temptation to control, manipulate, to have that grace, to surrender, to accept, especially God's sovereignty and birth and death, and certainly life and death, and in all these ways to glorify him, to honor him, and to allow the Holy Family in the way that they did this to inspire us, to intercede for us, and to help our families be more and more acknowledging that the gift of our life and our families and all the life that comes into that and the fruitfulness that God calls us to is true gift from God, and to every week present it back to him in whatever life circumstances there are, and to truly surrender and once again say with the Holy Family, thy will be done.